Good afternoon, Nordev. After 3 years of talking at Nordev, finally I have made it to the main stage. I haven't been bitter in the past about not being here, but I am so delighted to be here on the main stage today, talking about something which is really, I'm quite passionate about, but also I think everybody in tech should be quite passionate about: politics and the way that politicians and the councils and national government supports tech really does have a huge impact on our lives and our industry. So I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting this panel today. I wanted to go over roughly how the panel is going to work, and then I'll introduce our panelists, and then we'll dive straight into some questions. So this isn't just me getting to ask all the questions on this panel, although I would love to. I've got some, but I'm also going to open it up to people in the audience as well. Who knows what a QR code is? And if you don't, you're at the wrong conference. So you will be able to ask questions via the QR code. I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen because it's not on there yet, but I'm just keeping you on your toes. Please try to, through the panel, keep the questions relevant to the topic that we're discussing. But at the end, of course, you will be invited to ask other questions as well. Everyone okay with that? Good. We've got a lively bunch today. Everyone okay with that? Yeah, there we go. It's getting a bit Punch and Judy here, isn't it? Awesome. So, introducing your panel, which apparently the pictures aren't working for some reason. That's different because it was working about 30 seconds ago. But we'll start with Steve, and then we'll work down Jane and Steffan, if that's okay. So, Steve, if you'd like to introduce yourself. They're just water on.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Morphew. I'm leader of the Labour Group on Norfolk County Council, councillor for Catton Grove. I chair the Scrutiny Committee on the County Council, and in the dim and distant past, I was the leader of Norwich City Council.
So, hello, I'm Jane James. I'm the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services and Innovation, which obviously includes all the digital side of things. So, broadband for Norfolk, lobbying hard, shall I say, in terms of mobile signal. Please don't swear at me. But also the innovation work that we're doing both within the council and then influencing outside. And I represent Thetford East down on the border of Norfolk and Suffolk.
I'm Steph. I'm the Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate for North Norfolk at the next election, and I currently represent on the County Council a very rural part of the county called Melton Constable. My previous life was in tech. My wife now works for My Society, who run quite a lot of websites that promote democratic engagement, so I'm really interested in this topic, in particular how tech can help politics and civil society get ahead in where it needs to get to as well. So really pleased to be here.
Thank you so much for introducing everyone. What I'd like to do with the questions, some of the questions I've given a bit of background so that the audience and everyone can be up to speed on what we're discussing. What I'm going to do is, because just like the BBC, I'm going to give all of you equal time and opportunity to answer. We have to do that, right? I think we have to do that. I don't know, but we're going to do that because that's the right thing to do. And some of the questions will break up into a couple of parts. So I just wanted to sort of start really by talking about how I understand as a citizen what Norfolk thinks about tech and what our politicians and what our civil servants are trying to do with... Oh, I should introduce myself, actually. Sorry, everyone. Hi, I'm James. I'm the founder and CEO of Tech Educators. Paid him to do that. That was great. Thanks, everyone. A coding bootcamp based, started out of Norfolk, and now we have 5 locations nationwide, and also Akcela, which is an incubator that focuses on tech-enabled companies. So if you are thinking of starting a tech business in Norwich, in Norfolk, please drop by and say hi to your friendly incubator. Back to what I was saying, sorry, before we're about to encourage me. As a citizen, this is the sort of verbiage and what I see about what our politicians and what civil servants think about tech in the region. So the New Anglia LEP has 9 different competitive sectors, of which essentially it feels to me they want to double down on, like, these are the things that we're really good at. You hear about agri-tech, energy, but it's listed in there, digital and creative are listed as one of the 9 areas. So tick. That means, to me, I think tech is good. In our Better Together for Norfolk vision, which strategy runs until 2025, tech is really heavily referenced in there about unlocking opportunities in Norfolk for our residents and to skill up and, you know, make the region a wealthier place. And obviously there was that huge investment, I mean, £11.4 million into the Digitech factory at City College, Norwich, which is a large infrastructure play around digital. So for me, from the outside, it seems that there is a lot of political will, a lot of focus about tech. It was really an opportunity for us to improve the lives of our citizens, the wealth of the city, and employability in the city. But individually, what is your position on tech as a sector? And Steve, I'll start with you, if that's okay.
Thank you. Well, tech as a sector, I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things that we will share almost certainly across the parties, and can I just say in terms of equality of the timing, we're fairly sharp on those sorts of things, but we are also... We're quite good at debating things, so I don't think you'll have any nonsense from us today.
Thank you.
The tech is really important as a sector in itself, but it also underpins so many other things that go on there. If I can just kind of take you back to when I was leader of the City Council, we were talking about, I remember making a speech to business in about 2008, talking about the opportunities that we had around biosciences, around culture and creativity, and around finance, the finance industries, which were thriving in the city at the time. We had the financial crash, but since then we've also had a whole pile of other things that have happened. Those opportunities haven't gone away, but neither have they been properly exploited. But we have got all of the building blocks that are here to enable us to do that. And if we were focused on what we wanted to achieve, then we would be able to look at tech both in terms of a good in itself, but also what role it can play in the development of those other sectors. Now, the LEP is actually coming into the County Council, and there is a refresh of the economic strategy going on. I don't think I'm going to agree with what the economic strategy looks like when it comes out the other end, but nevertheless, one of the things that I will be absolutely pushing is to try and make sure that we understand how the interconnectivity of tech and those industries can work to drive the things that we're doing. But let's look at some of the areas where there are opportunities. Sometimes they look a bit prosaic, but things like social care. There are at the moment something like 28,000 people who work in health and social care in the county at the moment. But in the old LEP economic strategy, health and social care wasn't identified as being a key economic driver. What makes the excitement and the opportunities in health and social care? Well, it's tech-driven. And there's lots of things within that where there can be a societal improvement, societal difference, there can be successful businesses, and we could be a world leader, certainly a leader in class in the country. We've got the need, we've got the opportunities, we've got the background, we've got the history. All we need is the will and the investment. And I think if we can manage to make that work, and I'm sure we'll come to that in a future question, then I think the world is your oyster as tech people in Norfolk.
And moving down, Jane, what's your view? Thank you for that, by the way.
I think for me, the key part is our communities. And it's all great when we talk about what tech can do, but if it's not accessible, that's a real challenge to our communities. So in the west of Norfolk at the moment, we've got a fantastic pilot project going on called Tech Skills for Life. And that's about getting someone like my mum, frankly, and members of our community online safely and confidently. It's those soft skills that we take for granted because we're always using tech. But, you know, scam awareness, we had a piece on Radio Norfolk recently, and a lady with hearing issues has been able to utilise technology to communicate with her husband. I appreciate not everybody wants to communicate with their husband. However, it's made a real difference to her. And being able to utilise technology in that way is key. From a county council point of view, and it was really interesting listening to the AI discussions earlier, I'm very much minded of the just because we could doesn't mean to say we should. But we're utilising algorithms and machine learning with a falls project. So identifying people who are at risk of falls. It's not a direct county council requirement. We're helping stop people go into the NHS earlier and reducing the load there. But actually what we've found is we can use the learning that we've used there, and actually we can help combat, isolation, loneliness. We can't cure depression, but we can help identify people that are at risk and make a difference to lives again. So I think those aspects of tech are really key for us as a county council.
No, thank you for that. Really interesting stuff there on the fall detection. And I love the fact that, we've had two answers here. Really, one about what we're saying about actually tech. I'm going to use the term that if you've read any government report that's come out recently, cross-cutting. Wow, if I hear that word another time, how cross-cutting is, but also how councils really should be enabling and using tech as well. Steph, in terms of, again, moving back really if we can to on, are we investing enough in tech? Do we still want to focus on tech? What's your view on that for the region?
I don't think we're investing enough in tech. I think that generally speaking, governments and elected representatives have got pretty poor knowledge of tech. And I think that was proven 10 years ago when the first rumours came out about the Fujitsu scandal. And the fact that nobody seemed to have challenged the claim that there is no back door to the system. That to me exposes a fundamental misunderstanding of something which should be in the sort of common knowledge of decision makers. I think that we, and I say that for us at the County Council, for government too, should really put our money where our mouths are. And if we were talking about a policy to promote local food production, it would be ridiculous not to ensure that the County Council was stocking locally sourced produce in its canteen. I say that, but we did actually have a debate the other day about trying to protect access to cash, and it was revealed that you couldn't pay with cash in the canteen, so that does happen. But I think some of the biggest challenges that we face as a council, and that, in fact, the country faces, that our species faces. And if you look at the Y Combinator request for startups, there's everything in there from defence tech to climate change, cancer curing. These are startups that they're inviting to pitch for cash and accelerator membership. I think that the biggest problems we face as a species need tech as part of their solution. And it still baffles me that governments, procurers, commissioners seem scared enough, frankly, actually contracting to small, nimble organisations, and they'll go and give big contracts to the sort of usual suspects. But I'd like to go so much further. I mean, that so many problems could be solved with a £100 million X prize, and we won't even go anywhere near there when it comes to things like NHS data. So I think there's a lot we need to do. I think one other thing I add is that from a policy perspective, the UK is a relatively easy place to raise early stage seed funding. It's a really lousy place to raise mid-tier investment, the sort of 10 million plus through to kind of 50 million. And I think until that's plugged, you can talk about numbers as much as you like, but there's no actual path towards the kind of outcomes that a lot of founders are trying to get the support to reach.
It's interesting, actually, you talk about that mid-level and higher level, because one of the questions we just had in is around the fact that in Europe, and especially in the US, if you look at the tech startup counterparts in the US, raising serious funding in the US seems comparatively a doddle. Yet here, that mid-level, that high-level investment, I would argue even seed funding in Norfolk, especially in tech, is very difficult. Why do you think that is, especially regionally? Yeah.
I think it's partly regulation, and I think there's been a lot of coverage lately, and I think fairly mixed, but not necessarily conflictual cross-party discussions about the need to liberate or liberalise a bit the spectrum of asset risk that large pension funds can take on. There's absolutely no reason why a Series C in a well-established market shouldn't be a stable investment within the prudential regulations. So I think that's a sort of part of the bigger, very, very high value end of the cycle. I just don't think we have the people with the know-how to do it, frankly. I think in the US, a lot of that investment in the mid-tier is led by sort of 3 or 4 times successful exited startup entrepreneurs, and they give the confidence rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly, to the larger institutional investors to play with their and speculate with their money. And until we get that sort of ecosystem at that scale, we're not going to be able to see the same sort of thing over here. Obviously, in Europe, it's been quite often government stimulated, money that essentially the government is not expecting to get back. And particularly in places like Germany, the regional state governments have been using their own resources to encourage this. I think that's something which, with the devolution deal and the moving into the county council, we should really be looking at. In the terms of the size of the budget sort of component, I don't think we're talking about a huge amount of money that could be injected, and I've seen it successfully work in Birmingham for a start.
I just want to say I'm not being rude and sort of tweeting on my phone or texting my friends. This is where the questions are coming through. So I'm trying to keep my ear and eyes open on both. So that's what I'm doing if anyone's thinking, God, he's being really rude. Go on.
Yeah, if I can comment on that, I think three things that are missing, really. One is political will. The second is an appetite for risk. And the third is a proper business environment to enable those sorts of things to happen. Because I think if we do have a clear vision about what it is we're trying to achieve, and I don't think we have got that clear vision yet, and we know where the finance is going to come from and what the risk environment is around that, then we will get the kind of momentum. And I think what we do have to understand is that not every investment in tech or anything else actually turns into a multi-million pound success. But the ones that do can make a huge difference. And if we do put together the right sort of entrepreneurial culture around what we know is coming towards what we want to happen, then we stand a much better chance of getting on the right sort of pathway and not failing too often. But I don't think we should be frightened of failure given how fast everything is moving at the moment. And I think that's the critical thing, that we keep ahead of the curve and that we do start thinking about what comes next. At the moment, we always seem to be reacting to what's just happened. And I think we've got ourselves into a political, economic, cultural cycle of that. And I think we do need to break out of it. I mean, I can be party political and say I think a new Labour government would probably do that, but frankly, I think whatever happens at the next general election, there does have to be a reset about how we go about those things. Because looking at how people do things abroad, then we're falling behind, and if we're not careful, we'll finish up catching up when we need, with a reset, to jump ahead of that and try and make sure we are in a place where we can compete on the kind of scale. And that does mean coming up with finance and being familiar with, being aware of the risks and being prepared to live with them and putting the investment in the right place. The devolution deal, I'm not a fan of the existing devolution deal. I don't think it goes far enough and is enough. But it is a start, and we keep on being told it will open the door. If it does open the door, and I'll be kicking at the door, then there is a possibility that we could do something in Norfolk. If it's not going to be the catalyst for doing that, we need a different deal, more money, different framework, different model to work to.
I just wanted to pick up on one point you made there about, of course, we all want Norfolk to have that 100 million, 200, 500 billion pound business. And we all want that for the success stories and the opportunities and the cycles that internally builds. But I do think as well, we do constantly focus on those huge companies, but tech in itself can just be 10 people making a SaaS product. And for me, employing 10 people that are doing a tech-based job, earning far more money, multiplier effect into the economy, into the city, more coffee shops, how many people drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day or more, that's 10 people, that's 50 cups of coffee, that's helping the local economy as well. And I think for me, one of the things that we always try and focus on, isn't it, is those 100 million pound companies, but having a healthy tech ecosystem also means supporting people right at the very bottom who don't want to grow to that size as well.
Absolutely, and I think I'm sorry if I gave the impression we were looking for a mega solution, then I'm not sure it's very wise anyway. I would much rather have 1,000 businesses each employing 5 people than one business employing 5,000 people. Because if we do lose some of them in a risk environment, then we've still got the rest who can learn from the lessons of the other people who might not have made it this time, and it gives them an opportunity to come back into the sector and work and learn and do some other things as well. So I think it's really important that we do have People are starting small, staying small, working small, amalgamating, learning the lessons, passing it on, and if anybody does break through and gets into one of the big businesses, well, good luck to them. Yeah. Let's hope they don't get too big for their own boots.
Steph, I think you had a point there, sorry, was it?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a Jason Fried of 37 Signals rather than an Elon Musk kind of guy. So I'd much rather, like Steve has said, have a 5,000, 10 people tech companies. But let's face it, like all industries, it's an ecosystem. I think it depends a lot on what you see as the skills profile and the role of place, because there are many successful tech companies that work without a sense of where they are based, and in fact, my society is one of them. So I look around at the value proposition of Norfolk, and I think actually it's probably the place that makes individuals want to locate here. And if there's going to be a community of employers here, and therefore skills transfer, career paths, entry in through colleges and stuff, then it is absolutely vital that the full pyramid is represented. I think it's no different to farming in that sense in terms of supply chain integration or sector development.
Great. Awesome. I wanted to touch on investment because for most companies, when you're especially in tech, you need a certain level of investment just to get that MVP up and running, to get going. Development time is expensive, resources are expensive, IT equipment, cloud infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is some data taken by Bayhurst from January 2024. And I just want to talk through this slide for the audience. So Norfolk and Suffolk, I couldn't get Norfolk individually, so sorry, we were lumped into Norfolk and Suffolk here. Population of 1.6 million, which is the lowest of these four regions that I wanted to talk about. Essex, 1.8 million, Bristol, 470,000, Liverpool, 496,000. Norfolk and Essex, obviously, comparatively, distance to London, region, geographic, maybe not age makeup, a little bit younger, potentially, than Norfolk. Quite similar. Bristol and Liverpool, Liverpool especially, obviously long-term devolution deal in Liverpool, and heavy investment in what they've done in their infrastructure there. If we look at the total number of raises outside of tech, so investment into companies from that small SEIS level all the way up to Series A, etc., and beyond. Total raises in Norfolk 47, Essex 42, Bristol 68, Liverpool 53. But when you actually get down to the tech level across all of those elements, Norfolk and Suffolk 27, which represents 57% of all raises. Essex 28, which represents 66%. Bristol 73% and Liverpool 66%. But you can see that the number of raises for Norfolk and Suffolk is considerably lower. Compared to our peers in comparative cities, Norfolk has a lower number of tech raises or investment at all. What has been done to promote the region as a place to start or scale a tech company? And what should we be doing to move the needle on this? And Jane, if I start with yourself.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, yeah, the county councils, and it's very specifically a reason why it says Norfolk and Suffolk, because that was the basis of the LEP previously. So the county councils and the new Anglia LEP, we tried to address this because, yeah, it's not right. We're saying it's not right. We're saying it politically, it's not right. Industry saying it's not right. And we've done a few interventions, but are we there yet? No. Are we going to keep going? Hell yes. So we don't benefit from those same levels, and we're really keen to shift it. So we've got a business support programme called the Innovation Grant Monitoring Project. That's providing much needed, and I apologise, I'm so nervous talking to people and I do write things down, so apologies. So bid writing, grant mentoring support for the tech sector, so that we can help you make a difference. And it's about that on the ground engagement and saying, what can we do to support? Because we can't do it all by ourselves. We are, for want of a better phrase, enablers. So that's our key role there. We're also part of the Norfolk and Suffolk Innovation Board. When I say we, Norfolk County Council. And we've recently secured a local action plan with Innovate UK. So again, those people that have the influence and the power we're getting the thumb screws out on, we're trying to leverage it in. So hopefully that will start seeing those differences.
Awesome, thank you. And I do have to say, and I will say, if anyone doesn't know about the Regionalise Innovate UK grants, there was one for agri-tech, which essentially was allotted money just for the region. A few companies I know have put in for that, and that type of thing has been awesome for the region, and good work on the teams that have done that. Please.
Yeah, but in terms of possibilities and potential, I think just have a look at the geography and the structures that are there. Liverpool is a mayoral combined authority. Essex is literally the suburbs of London, and is one of the biggest counties. But if you think about most of the places that are significant, they look to London. They don't look over their shoulder. Norfolk and Suffolk are over the shoulder for most of those people who are looking towards London. But let's have a look at those successful areas. Bristol is a city. Liverpool is a city. Norfolk isn't a city. Norwich is. And Norwich is the only city in a very big rural area. Now, it's quite right that we should be making sure that we get the right potential for the rural areas and agri-tech and all of those sorts of things. But let's have a look at Norwich and its surrounding area. What have we got in Norwich? We've got the Research Park. We've got the University of East Anglia. We've got the Quadrum Institute. We've got Norwich University of the Arts. We've got still Aviva. We've actually got the most incredible cluster of tech-based potential almost anywhere. And do we make a fuss about it? No, we don't. Not enough anyway. How many jobs, how many businesses actually spin off in Norwich and in Norfolk from that cluster and actually produce the kind of potential, realise the potential that we are growing in those institutions? Nothing like enough. We're not on the national radar in the way we should be. We're not on the international radar where we belong, where we should be. Certainly some places like the John Innes Institute, it's a little while ago, but I was trying to find out what was going on that they were doing. They could give me examples of work they were doing in China, in Eastern Europe, in Norwich. Not so much. There's loads of potential here, but unfortunately we get lumped in with Norfolk and Suffolk and all of the other things that are there. And important as they are, what we fail to do is actually sing the praises, sing the potential, push the brand that is tech in Norwich. And one of the reasons why I'm so pleased that it says Norwich on so many of the things that you've got at this conference is because Norwich is the hotbed, is the driver, and is the most significant bit. Think about where the Silicon Valley is. How long is Silicon Valley? Well, let's have a look and see where Norwich is compared to the length of the Silicon Valley in Cambridge. Actually, it's on the doorstep in American terms. And we've also got Thetford in the middle. And if you were looking for somewhere to set up a business which wasn't overheating, where the property was relatively cheap and where the connections are brilliant, Thetford would be the place you would go. So we're allowing all sorts of opportunities to be missed, and we're not got the right sort of drive behind it at the moment. That's one of the reasons why we're not getting the kind of bang straight back that we should do, and those sorts of numbers. And I think we've got so much potential, and we really should be pushing it and selling ourselves a blooming sight harder. We've got everything we need to be world leading.
I agree. Good. Steph, anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's a shame that Linton is not in Norfolk, because it is, as I'm sure you know, equidistant between London and Norwich, but over Thetford. I think I moved the business I was running to Birmingham when we got some free stuff. I moved it to... gone dead. I moved it to London when they were offering us a different sort of free stuff. So I think that the idea of come and base your tech business here for cheap rates or cheap space or a free incubator, that's kind of, we've all moved on from that, luckily. I think we ought to promote two things. One is making Norfolk a great place for tech companies to get customers. And another thing would be a great place to develop particularly high early stage IP dependent startups. So I agree we're an enabler at the County Council, but we're also a customer, as I mentioned earlier. I think that there is work that could be done in certain sectors to prepare the market for trying out new technology. My startup, the one that got away was Droplet, which some of you, did anyone here remember Droplet? It was around for a few years, up until about 2016. Distant past echoing. We were in 12 cities in the UK. Norwich was the one where we cracked the model because the independent business community here was so willing to try out new tech ideas. And I think that kind of market making, market preparation thing could be done in Norfolk. I think to make those opportunities, like Steve mentioned, viable for both the tech company and the agribusiness or the NHS trust, it needs help. Partnership programs need to be set up. And we need to look at what the specific USPs are. So in Norfolk, geriatric population data, health outcome data, that sort of stuff is unique in the country and indeed in the world. Again, some of our advanced agriculture data or business sector participants might be another opportunity there. But I think above all, you've got to make it a nice place to do tech. It's already a pretty nice place to do tech. But that's about communities like this. It's about broadband. It's about transport, and just as much about transport east to west as it is down to London. So a few things I think we could be doing a lot better.
And if I may, going back to that leveraging in and what we can do. So Norfolk and Suffolk County Councils have worked closely with innovation hubs, and we've put together a bid for, and I've got to get this phrasing right because I always get tongue-tied on it, the Barclays Eagle Labs Ecosystem Partnership Programme, which is really easy to say as long as you put your teeth in, which is ultimately funded by government's digital growth grant. We're feeling kind of buoyant and optimistic that that's going to come to fruition. And the key thing is that's there to address those specific challenges about those tech raise rates. So everything firmly crossed, including toes at the moment. Hopefully we'll see something from that soon.
Awesome. I think one of the other things that wasn't discussed here, and I don't know how much everyone will know about it, but one of the things that actually a couple of startups that I know have really benefited from is a match funding pot that's available through the LEP. Obviously, we don't know what's happening with that going forward, but that has been a real boost. So if anyone doesn't know about it, I think it's still running. I don't know if I think it's still running. If you actually secure funding to a certain level and get through the board, there is a match funding option as well. And I think that has been a real support as well to what we've done regionally, and hopefully that can continue as well. But I don't know if anyone's got anything to say on that. No, maybe move on.
Well, actually, that's kind of going back to the devolution conversation. That's one of those. Can we? What could that look like? So, we're still in those formative stages in those terms, and the council has yet to make that formal final decision. But there's opportunity there, and as you said, that seed funding, that match funding, that opportunity to add in. And whilst, as Stephen said, it's not enough at the moment. Completely agree. It's not enough at the moment. But if we can use that to leverage in and support, our tech communities and our other industries in Norfolk, that's fantastic. So fingers crossed we'll be able to do something with that.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully so. And I think when we come with it, there is a point around devolution. The reason I pulled out Bristol and Liverpool as well, is a little bit loaded on my side, is Liverpool and Bristol both have more incubators than majority of, and obviously with Liverpool being an MCA, as you talked about, huge amount, Baltic Ventures, £5 million investment into startups in that region, so from the MCA. So it goes to show that those big thinking, those big ideas can really start to pay dividends in the future. No leading on to this one, and I am checking a few of the questions you're asking. I'm sitting there thinking, hold on a second, I've asked a really good thing about skills. I'm not ignoring you. The reason I haven't come to it is because there's other slides about skills, and there's other things that I think some of the topics are being covered. So don't feel that I'm just ignoring your questions. Some of them are coming up later, and will be a proper point to put those in. No leading on this one, but what are you proud of that your party has done to promote the development of tech in the Norfolk community? I'll start with you, sir.
Well, it's a little bit difficult to say that, actually, because in terms of in control, we haven't been in control of anything to be able to make the right sorts of decisions for some time. So I can tell you about the potential and the things that we're likely to do in the future, but in terms of specifically what we've been able to do over the last 10 years, 13 years has been somewhat difficult. The only area which has been able to make those sorts of decisions was really Norwich City Council, which has been under the cosh of austerity for that period. So I could tell you about a number of the opportunities that haven't come to fruition as a result of all of that lot, but it is a bit kind of difficult. One of the things that I would say that did disappear with the coalition coming in 2010, looking at Steph down there, Norwich did have, for a very brief period, a unitary council, which would have given us the opportunity to do a whole pile of things around the areas that I was talking about. And I think one of the things that I am proud that the city has managed to do is to hang on to a number of the opportunities that are there ready for the future. I briefly mentioned Norwich University of the Arts, and look how that's come on over the last decade. And the things that they do there now, and things that 10, 15 years ago we didn't even dream of, in terms of games development, for example. I mean, it's fantastic. And that's a whole sector that they've almost been pivotal in driving. But we should be really proud of that, and proud that we've created the environment for those sorts of things to happen. So it's, as much as anything, it's about the welcoming. And I guess, in terms of proud for the city, it's making it available as a place of learning and development, because UEA has considerably increased over that period of time. Newer has considerably increased, and I think, again, if I'm proud of anything, it will be that the potential is there and ready to be realised with the right sort of progressive policies that take us on from here.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of our business partners and I say it really feels like in Norwich, the startup community has been seeded over 25 years. The tech community is here. You talked about the ecosystem, the universities, Norwich University of the Arts, again, absolutely incredible what they're doing in games. You're absolutely right. It really feels like the touch paper is ready to be lit. And hopefully we're all going to be here to experience that.
And it has been ready to be lit one way or another for quite a long time now, and our time has got to be coming soon. It's got to be.
Jane, what's your views on what you're proud of what's been achieved in the tech ecosystem?
Well, I think, from a Norfolk County Council perspective, we've been supporting this event for the last 10 years, which is fantastic. Sync the City, I'm really looking forward to next week because it's the Young People's Techathon. So again, it's making the tech conversation part of our everyday conversation. It's normal, it's not tech, it's everyday. So I think that's key. Our Go Digital programme, I was at an event at County Hall yesterday for the employment and skills side of things. And that's key to supporting all of our businesses, going back again to the AI conversation that was happening earlier. Everybody wants to talk AI. Sometimes you don't need AI, you just need a good algorithm, and that one thing will work, and that's it. What they call it? AI washing. Yes. It's not greenwashing anymore, it's AI washing. We're going to make it all AI. And actually, again, it goes back to the could we, should we? We don't have to do everything that way, but tech is an enabler, it can help. The Connected Innovation Programme, for example, has also shone a light on our innovation ecosystem. So that's been key. So whilst we haven't always been able to throw the money at it, it's also our role to highlight it, help that spotlight go on, and say, what can we do to assist? It's not always that fiscal side of things, but frankly, that fiscal side of things is really important, and we need to leverage more of that in.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Steph.
Thank you. I think locally, we're only in power in one place, which is in North Norfolk, the district council there. We've led for 6 years. I think the main thing I'm proudest of is that by being a younger, more dynamic looking and sounding, more diverse cabinet, we've managed to hire people who see their job in their officer roles as being as much about tech as it is whichever function or department there is. I don't think that's a policy success. I think it's just a sort of what happens when the people that are representative of our communities look a bit more like the communities they're trying to serve. From a policy perspective, I know Steve had a go at me over the coalition, but actually when Vince Cable was the Secretary of State for Business Industrial Strategy, this country actually had an industrial strategy, and it was heavily weighted towards tech, the themes of which we have carried forward in subsequent manifestos. But it's quite interesting to look at the areas of focus. So, looking at tech to accelerate low-emission technology, for example, is the very first top line, followed by investment in digital infrastructure, and that's where I think the startup benefit comes from, but also to protect UK consumers from being exploited by big tech, and I include in that being exploited through tax evasion as well. So I think we see tech from a policy perspective as not just being about encouraging tech, but sort of stewarding its role in the life of the citizen. And I think when we were actually in government, we were able to do that quite convincingly through the Department for Business Industrial Strategy.
And if I may, I'd like to pick up on the whole digital infrastructure piece. So back in 2012, we can all vaguely remember it, can't we? Superfast broadband in Norfolk was underwhelming. Something about 47%, I think it was, at. With the Better Broadband for Norfolk project, we've managed to get that up to just over 97%, so that's been fantastic. We've also, working with central government, have leveraged in additional funding through Project Gigabit. We were one of the first areas to get that. So it's not just the tech skills, it's an analogy to the roads. You've got to have the roads. You can't just know how to drive. You have to have a road to drive it on. And it's really important that we keep seeing that investment in our infrastructure coming in. And the really exciting part about the Project Gigabit piece is that City Fibre are working for the future as well. So part of their offer are the apprenticeships also. So we're also addressing that skills side of things.
Just on the broadband project, which to some extent all three of us can take some party credit for, because it was the Rainbow Alliance, Lib Dems and Labour and Greens and UKIP, which instigated that project, and it's been under the Conservatives that it's carried on to that level of success. I think my critique of it, despite the fact that 97% is pretty good and it's a damn sight better than it was, is the fact that as a country, the way that funding was rolled out was basically to line the pockets of Openreach by making them the sole providers, getting some rebates when subscription rates were going high and lots of people were joining the new schemes. But if you look at other countries where they've tried to improve broadband infrastructure, they've taken a totally different and, in my view, much more successful approach by working from the outside in. Rural Finland connected full fibre to the property for its furthest, most outlying properties and communities first, because once you've done the hardest to reach ones, every single subsequent one gets easier. And my only beef with the project, which I think we're all proud of the impact it's had, is that we should have done that here. We should have started with full fibre, not some sort of halfway house. We should have started with the farthest away, hardest to reach places first. And by now, we could have been sitting on 100% full fibre connectivity, probably for less capital investment. But that's the way them works at the moment.
Just have a horrible feeling that remaining 3% follows me around, actually.
Starlink. I wanted to, it's a great segue when you talk about infrastructure, the road, and now really moving on to the cars and the people, if you will. So tech, again, this is sort of just a scene-setting piece really for the audience. Tech in the skills in the region has been another real focus. Skills Bootcamp national programme, £34 million invested nationally, of which the New Anglia LEP, Norfolk and Suffolk County Council, did win provision, ring-fence funding for in the region. Again, the £11.4 million investment into Digitech Factory, which obviously was drawing down on national, central government money. It's a lot of money, 11.5. Buildings are expensive, right? But one thing I think the local skills improvement plan and its predecessor, I can't even read that. That is a horrible front cover, by the way, of whatever the last report was, does talk about how there's a real patchwork of skills, especially for businesses and even for young people. One of the questions here I'm going to lump in with that is about, you talked about apprenticeships. Accelerated apprenticeships aren't strong enough in the region, I think, is some of the feedback. It was more of a comment, really. but the availability of understanding the skills network is quite difficult, I think. So, yeah, successful tenders, fantastic infrastructure play against this backdrop that skills provision is still difficult to navigate for people and for businesses. How do you feel the skills provision has performed for the region, especially around its tech offering? What would you say, if you could say this has worked or that hasn't worked? And what would you do next? And Steph, I'll start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think what's worked is UX and newer. I think that's a sort of case study in how to incubate a community of skilled and, at the time, and still heavily in demand roles. I think beyond that, I think it's hard to see where the impact of some of this stuff has really been felt. I think, talk about apprenticeships, I'm a huge fan of apprenticeships. It's easy for me to say this because I was always the mouth, not the brains, in the startups I was involved with. But I think you do need to learn how to code before you can join a tech company as a coder. I'm not sure it's sort of the thing you can turn up and do a pure apprenticeship-based training in. So, the short answer would be, let's make more places available in colleges for young people and adults to learn how to code. The problem with that, though, is that underneath all of this are two elephants in the room, which are housing and transport. Very well talk about entry into career paths, but if you can't afford to live in a place because you're priced out, or you can't afford to access further education opportunities at any age, but particularly at 16, then those places are not going to be taken up by the people who could be brilliantly suited to them, but because of their circumstances, unable to access them. So I would say that part of this is addressing the housing crisis that's happening in our county, but also, and most importantly, the fact that our public transport network is probably none of those three words in reality.
Jane?
I think obviously the digital skills boot camps have really, really helped, but they're not the complete answer. We need to normalise tech in schools. I think that's really, really important. And that's not just, I can use a spreadsheet, I can use a word processor. There is so much more. I can remember my two having great fun with coding, sending a Raspberry Pi up with an air balloon and then doing nothing with it. And whilst the idea was great, and it was a fantastic opportunity, it was what we always get as councillors, so what? And I think we need to work on that so what, especially within our education settings, and a lot earlier on.
Agreed.
I think it's I think we go back to basics almost. What are we trying to achieve? How are we going to get there? And what's the route plan? And I think talking about where we've got to, some of the disparate innovations and parts of the jigsaw are there, but I haven't seen anything that looks as if it's at all joined up or has got the clear sense of purpose or a way of achieving it. Now, if we want those sorts of things to happen, then apprenticeships is great, but where does it fit into the overall system, and what's the point of doing them unless we know where we're going to take it? And okay, once we've got a plan, it's relatively easy to change it. But until we've got a plan, what we've got is a lot of people who are trying to innovate things in different sorts of ways, and we don't really know how they link together. I think I had a problem with the LEP in its old form, and I hope that's one of the things that will be addressed now as it becomes part of the county council and as we get a new economic strategy, and that will be about how this jigsaw fits together. I think quite a lot of the things that were being talked about before just weren't simply joined up, and I think some of it was because there was so much innovation and that people were getting a little bit almost besotted by the opportunities and the shiny things that kept on appearing. I think we're now in a position where we absolutely know that the future is going to be more than influenced by tech developments, so we need to get a grasp on what it actually means for us and how we're going to make this potential work, and we don't do that by not having a plan. So all of those things that are part of it, particularly apprenticeships, absolutely great. How does it fit into the overall picture? And if we want people to do these things, I think as Steph said, then we do need to make sure that we know how to recruit, retain, and give people the opportunity to exploit the opportunities. And we can't just kind of assume that everything is going to be fine. We need to make sure that we grasp it properly.
I think one of the things that Steph, you mentioned about the fact that Norwich University Arts and the UX, and I think you're sort of touching on here as well, is place has a really important role to play in maintaining talent that's here. But a lot of university graduates do move away. I know it's not in tech, but all of my friends, for some reason, were either in pharma or chemistry. Every one of them had to leave to then come try and get as close back to Norfolk as they can. They've moved all the way down and slowly moving back up. What role do you think place has? And I think you were touching on it earlier about, Steph, about place and making people want to stay here. It's like, how much of an influence do you think place has on skills as well?
So I don't think we should be trying to make people stay here, actually. I think there's two quite distinct agendas here. One is, what do we do for our young people in Norfolk, and how do we make sure they get opportunities to develop skills, enter into careers in tech? And if they choose, like I did, not that I could code, but to go to Birmingham or the Bahamas, great for them. I don't think it should concern us if people are moving away with their skills. Mainly because, what you do when you hire, you put a job ad out on either in a niche community if you're in a specialist area, or on Indeed or LinkedIn, and you'll probably interview or consider an application from anybody that's remotely in the same time zone, or if you can't get people in the same time zone, you'll interview anyone from anywhere with the skills that you need. If your business needs someone who can do complex database mapping, you're going to get them wherever they are, and it's not going to be a condition of their employment that they move to Norwich. So I'm not sure how relevant talent retention is for the development community. You're them. You can say if you disagree, but I think from the point of view of policymakers and looking at education policy especially, it's not whether they leave or stay, it's can we offer people who are born and raised in Norfolk the opportunities to get a career in tech. At the moment, I think that's a big open opportunity.
I'm not sure I entirely agree. When again, going back to the 2008 time, what we were looking at around that time was certainly with the University of the Arts was people were graduating, coming up here for their training, learning all the ropes, and then they would push off to London and they would get the experience and they would get their track record sorted out, but they almost certainly wouldn't want to stay in London to start their own businesses or whatever else they were going to do, and they come back to Norwich because it was a much nicer place to live. Things have moved on somewhat because we've got high-speed broadband that we didn't have then. We've also now, post-pandemic, we've got people working in all manner of places which are a long way from where their work notionally would have been in the past. So I think the nature of work has considerably changed, and we ought to be looking at how can we make it possible for people to live and work based in Norwich, even if their clients, their notional workplace is a long way away. And I think the quality of life that we can offer in Norwich and Norfolk is going to be absolutely crucial. So travel within and to be able to get conveniently to the places that sometimes people do have to go to is going to be absolutely imperative. So looking at the quality of life that we are providing people, the affordability of their housing, childcare is absolutely critical, education, entertainment, all of the things that actually make up a proper quality of life, a good quality offer, as well as the job, as well as the opportunity to do the things that you want to do in a career. I think that's really important. So I think we need to be rather more holistic in the way that we do go about it and make sure that we can retain people here because they no longer have to leave in the way that they used to.
Agreed. I've just had a comment that there was some other sessions that kicked out. So some people in here hasn't heard everyone from the speakers. So Steve, I don't know if you could go down the line and reintroduce for some people who've just joined. Sorry, that was one of the comments. So.
Thank you. I'm Steve Morphew. I'm leader of the Labour Group on Norfolk County Council. I chair the Scrutiny Committee, and once upon a time I was leader of Norwich City Council as well.
So Jane James, and at Norfolk County Council I'm the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services and Innovation.
I'm Steph. I'm hoping to become the next MP for North Norfolk for the Liberal Democrats. And can I just, in the interest of stimulating debate, I think I don't disagree with what Steve said about what makes a place viable to live. I just think that A, there's not a huge amount that we can do to necessarily change that, and B, we do really well at that stuff already. I know people in North Norfolk who have moved with their job and their nice London salary because they only have to go down to the city once a week. You try getting in a hotel on a Wednesday night in central London, it is virtually impossible, and that's why. So, we welcome that degree of footlooseness and flexibility of working. I think we should as a county, certainly in North Norfolk, which has the highest proportion of nonagenarians in the country and the oldest demographic in the country, having working age families of any income is a welcome contribution to the local economy. I think we do really well at some of the lifestyle attractiveness of the county. But I just don't think we should get too hung up about trying to retain people that we've grown here. And we need to recognise that from a business development point of view, tech has always been pretty footloose in the way that hires are made. I cannot think of a tech role that I've seen that requires somebody outside of perhaps robotics to relocate to Norwich in order to be eligible to apply for the job. So I don't know whether we should be focusing on that over and above what I see as a much bigger need, which is we're letting down the young people in Norfolk at the moment by not giving them the opportunities to get into those career paths.
I'm going to try and explain devolution. So wish me luck. I've got this slide which comes from
we might understand it after you explain it.
I was hoping for some help. Line. So this is from the Norfolk County Council or the Norwich City Council website, one of the two, I can't remember. This is devolution, and I'm just going to read it out a little bit. Essentially, in December 2022, which still throws me because that's 2 years ago, nearly, a deal was agreed, a level 3 deal, whatever a level 3 deal is, but that's what we got, which would give some powers back to Norfolk County Council, Suffolk County Council, but we're focusing on Norfolk, which includes a £20 million a year investment fund for the region. Am I doing okay so far? For the county, thank you. In early 2023, we asked everyone, hey, do we think that's a good idea? And 64% said, yeah, cool, we'd like to have control of the money from government, that's nice. And 57% agreed with the principle of it and the benefits that it would bring, with 31% disagreeing to an elected leader. In December 2023, which is December just gone, years are terrible for me, the Cabinet recommended that level 3 deal, with an election of that elected mayor in 2025, May 2025. So not this May, next May. Cool. And that was on the 12th of December, subject to a vote in 2024. So I don't understand that it was agreed, but there's another agreement that's got to come. Is that right? I don't know. So I think, basically, as I understand it, we're getting devolution, we're getting a level 3 deal, which includes a £20 million fund that we are able to manage, so central government doesn't tell us what to do with the money. We get to control that money ourselves. And alongside that, adult education budget is also controlled by the region as well. Did that make sense to everyone? Yeah? Oh, cool. Because I said it and I still don't know. Awesome. So, I've gone the wrong way. So, as I understand it, the devolution deal will unlock control of the region's adult education budget and a £20 million per annum investment fund. How do you, or would you propose that these funds should benefit the tech community and businesses with, £20 million is going to have a lot of competing demands? Steve, I'll start with you, if that's okay.
The devolution deal has consumed an awful lot of time and an awful lot of discussion, and whilst it is a good thing, I think everybody will agree that having more powers and more money is a good thing, so having more control over what's gone on. We have got bogged down with this thing, the directly elected leader, which is not a mayor, it's a directly elected leader of the county council. Park that. If you want to spend some time on that, then go into a darkened room, because it's fairly tedious, and whether or not it happens. One thing to remember, of course, is before any of this now kicks in, there will be a general election. Whether or not the existing government, if it was returned, continued with it in its existing form, or certainly a Labour government would change it, then that's a whole other question. But level 3, the opportunity to take extra powers is going to be there, hopefully, whichever government is returned. £20 million, that £20 million a year sounds, it's useful money, let's not deny it, but that £20 million at the moment isn't inflation-proofed. So since that number was put forward, we've already had about 10% inflation, so it's already worth less. So we need to be a bit cautious about how excited we get, and actually given the amounts of money that, in terms of spending power, that have been taken away from councils, that doesn't even come close to making it up. Nevertheless, it is useful money that can be invested, and we do need to think about where we invest it to leverage as much return as possible, and to see whether or not we can go back to the government to get a better deal on top of it. I think if we're not careful, we do run the risk of getting carried away by the numbers and the money, and I think what's more important is we actually get carried away with ambition, that we do spell out what it is we're trying to achieve, make the case for it, and then go in search of the money. That couple of million quid a year, or 20 million quid a year, will be useful leverage to try and get that, to do the feasibility studies, to put together the business plan, maybe to do things to start assembling sites, to start putting in training for the specific skills that we would need, and if they are tech skills, to develop them, to start making sure that we've got the right people in the right places at the right time. That of itself, the devolution deal of itself, is not going to be, in its current form, the game changer. What we do with it and how we change our mindset and our cultural approach to it, that's going to be the game changer, and then we can go out and look for the money to follow it. And I go back to the point I made before, we've got so much potential. We've got so many things that are in the right place. If that's another one, then maybe that will be the one that unlocks that potential and turns it into a reality. But the devolution deal of itself isn't the answer to it, but it might be a good start.
Awesome, thank you. Jane?
I mean, for me, it ties into the Norfolk economic strategy that we're putting together at the moment. I think that part's key. We have, as has been said so many times, we have so much opportunity, and it's not just in the tech sector. There are so many opportunities out there, and I dare say we could probably spend that money 30 times over, easily.
I could do the 20 for you.
Okay, thank you. But we need to work with communities like the tech community, like our agricultural communities, work out what it is we need. And the other part of that is that adult education budget. That's key, because we can then support what we need to support going forward, having those conversations again with the ecosystems that we have around all of our industries. So that's key. So what I would say, and my call to arms, actually, because it's not just about us, when we go out for consultation on that economic strategy, talk to us, feedback to us, share what you need, because actually without your input, we're just a bunch of three politicians sitting up here blowing hot air again.
I'll blow a bit of hot air. 20 million quid is sod all when the county council spends £1.8 billion a year and has lost £100 million a year over the last 5 years from government funding. So it really is not very much money, and not really a deal, although I did back it in the end for the reasons that have been given. The County Council put out a magazine where they said that the total revenue of the County Council was 1,800 billion, and that perhaps is where the adult education budget should be spent, on general data literacy and digital literacy for adults across the county. What I would do, that 20 million quid, if I was in charge, is I would put it into an X Prize to incentivise teams to design a new solution to the relationship between local government and the citizen. The County Council spends about half that amount of money a year already on consultants, trying to find savings. I don't think it's about trying to find savings. I think it's about designing, completely overhauling, so that the way that we interact with local government is completely aligned to our citizen journey, that the different interaction points that we have should be timed, preempted, triggered, in a way that we have come to expect from most of the consumer tech, consumer services we use, but it feels like the best that a government can do is put together a half-decent form for reporting a pothole. So there's such an opportunity there to rewire and digitally enable the relationship between the citizen and the state. And I'd put something together with a £20 million prize and total access to all of Norfolk County Council databases and systems to make it possible. But I'm not in charge. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I really like the view of. I think it was in Brad Feld's Startup Communities. He talks about the fact that when government makes policy, we make policy on term basis, 4 years at a time. A lot of that can happen, and innovation really works in 10, 20-year cycles. And I think one of the things that I'd really like to see from it is that long-term 10, 20-year view of actually this is protected for this. Go for that moonshot thing that's going to take us 10 years to get to, and really allow that to happen over a longer period of time, rather than, I think sometimes, come back to the funding for education and the boot camps, for example, we can get really frustrated with county council level because we think, it's not moving quick enough. Actually, it's central government that's really slowing things down. So I really hope with this ring fence money, we can actually, as a region, be, this is moonshot money. This is really truly about investment into the region. Let's take a long 10-year approach, look at it, rather than let's do it for 4 years and then actually, just as people are really starting to get involved and interested in it and understand what it is, let's change it over to that, because that's what we want to do and that's what I want to see, Steffan.
It's totally moonshot stuff, but I think it makes so much sense. When Sky can propensity score your likelihood to enjoy a new program that features nobody you've ever heard of before, serve it up to you and you enjoy it, you wonder why the organisation that is literally your first touch point at birth, the registration of a child, through to your last touch point after death, where they register your death, and everything in between, from the bins to your educational performance and achievements, just taking one subject alone, like preventing child abuse or social exclusion, the data points, the signals that indicate a likely risk are all out there, staring us in the face, but there's nothing to bring them together to one central place that can be used to determine, detect, preempt, and intervene effectively. I'm not talking about the partnership working or safeguarding. All of that is important, has its place, but I'm talking just about the raw value of data to give us propensity signals to help prevent some of the worst harms and some of the worst poverty in society. If we had some sort of reason that we could use to get every citizen willingly to start to interact through, whether that's one type of login to one system throughout their lives, or simply that we're using those data points to more accurately determine and target need. I think that's where the sort of the game-changing opportunity comes from. At the moment, whichever party's in power, the way local government works is like trying to enter into a battlefield with everybody with one arm behind their back, standing facing a different direction. It's so siloed, it's so interventionist. We'll try and do this to fix this problem here. None of it is holistic, none of it's system-driven, and I think that's where the biggest opportunity in tech to change things for the better actually lies at the moment.
One of the things that I worry about with devolution is it's kind of like, there's your pocket money, you've had that now, don't come back asking for any more. That's a bit of a worry. I don't know how that works out. So on the national stage, once we've got devolution money, how will we work to continue to promote getting more money for us and ensuring that it's not kind of like, Norfolk's had its money now, we want to continue to get further money. What are we planning to do on that front, Jane? I don't know if you want to say.
I have to say that's a conversation that we've had as a cabinet and as a Conservative group, really worrying, going, yeah, there's your pocket money, off you go, don't buy too many sweets and don't rot your teeth. For us, we've said, what's next? This is great, what's next? Because as has been already agreed, 20 million a year is not enough. So where can we get more? How can we get more? And recently there were some discussions within Westminster regarding level 4. I'm looking forward to fighting the super boss at the end of it. I don't know how that's going to play out. I'm not sure how I'm going to be fighting. We won't go there. But to keep it non-political, there are these sweeteners along the way, and my concern is actually what needs to be coming down, regardless of party colours, is sustainable funding in your locality, and that's the true heart of devolution, is getting money into the communities for the communities to spend in the way that they know best. So we in Norfolk, we understand our residents, we understand our businesses, we need to learn more, admittedly, but we are best placed to support, not a bunch of white-collared workers in Westminster who tell us they know best, because they don't. And for me, that's the next stage of devolution, is making sure more comes our way.
But let's not pretend we've been spectacularly underinvested by the government for the last 15 years. I mean, we really haven't had our share, and all the potential that I've talked about and keep on banging on about, we seem to be completely ignored. I mean, the administration, and let's be a bit party political, has been asking questions of their own administration in government over the last several years, and basically not been getting very much in the way of positive answers, apart from one blooming great road, which is pretty controversial at the best of times around here anyway. But certainly a lot of the opportunities just simply have gone begging for that period of time. I don't know whether or not devolution is going to open the door, because we are told that it will do, but I think there is a real risk. They're giving us that bit of money with the one hand, but as Steph said, over the last few years they've been taking money away from us. What's happening to the LEP funding? Well, we'll see what actually happens to the LEP funding, whether or not it will be maintained, will finish up being less, or whether or not somehow or another, as often happens when we have these transformational happenings, somehow the budget seems to kind of disappear, or get less, or get diverted into spending on something else which we never thought of in the first place. So I am incredibly suspicious. That's one of the reasons why I voted against it, because I want more assurances about where this is going to lead, and if it is genuinely the path to the promised land, let's give some assurances, let's have some guarantees. And there are actually kind of assurances and guarantees which I think could be available cross-party if the will was there. And I think certainly the will is there to try and make sure that some of these things happen. But I think it's a very good question, and one that we need to keep our eye on. Is this really going to make the difference that we hope it will, or is it just going to be a sop?
Yeah, the whole model for local government funding is completely broken. Of that 1.8 billion, the majority is spent on statutory services for adult services and children's services. That is, care for elderly and adults of all ages that have additional needs, and everything in children's services, from schools to looked after children. So in reality, the County Council only really has judicial oversight over, or judgment over, how to spend about 450, maybe 500 million quid a year. And yet, we've got an older population demographic, lower levels of business activity, therefore less money coming in from business rates. Kensington and Chelsea, one of the wealthiest boroughs in the country, has amongst the lowest council tax rates, because so many businesses are paying business rates that they can afford to provide, well, very little services by comparison to some other places. There are far fewer older people, far fewer people or families that need help. So the whole way in which councils are expected to basically rely upon council tax to raise money to provide national services that are as important as the NHS is fundamentally broken. Until that changes, I think there's going to be little in the way of change in the outcome that we see. So I'd rather sort that out first, get a permanent funding formula that actually represents funding for where the areas of greatest need are. And then, yes, the long-held Liberal view that devolution, not to councils, but to citizens, actually, and to communities, is a good thing, can be the next thing that we talk about. Meanwhile, I think this word devolution is going to continue to get used by the two main parties in a way that I think is slightly misleading, because it's not really about giving money and power to citizens, it's about giving money and power to individuals, albeit elected. But, the directly elected leader of Norfolk County Council, assuming that happens, means that government has just got one person to have to argue the toss with about what happens in Norfolk, rather than 7, which they have at the moment with all the different district and local council leaders. So it is an act of simplification and the concentration of power, not what I believe devolution actually means.
So last point for this. Thanks ever so much to the panel. I know it's gone so quick, or I feel it's gone quick. This is again this sort of long-term moonshot thinking question. Really, is what impact do you feel tech will have on our economy and prospects of our community over the next 20 years, and what will you be doing to support and promote this? Steph, I'll start with you.
As long as we tax tech companies properly, then it could have a transformative impact on our society, given that this is a country long established to have excellent minds, world-class research facilities, and probably more innovation, true innovation per capita than anywhere else in the world. We've singularly failed to turn that into the sorts of economic success stories that mean that society gets paid back for the investment that it takes to get us to that position. So that's what I think it could do. What am I going to do? Carry on championing the idea that you'll get better results, putting a big prize up, that teams and founders can get funded to compete for the chance to win, than you will paying millions and millions of pounds to consultancy companies. So that's my little bit. I'll keep banging on that drum, whatever level of politics I get to.
Jane?
Next 20 years in tech, crikey, I think we'll all be sitting there going, didn't see that one coming. Should be, dealing with Sarah Connor about now, shouldn't we? Theoretically. However, in all sensibleness, I don't know what the future's going to hold. I think we can only look at the opportunities and see how we can embrace them, see what difference they can make, not just economically, but socially as well, for our residents, for our communities. Things like those soft skills, keeping people safe online, that kind of thing, has such a benefit. But also, the social aspects of keeping in touch with people. As Steffan said, people do move away. People move around the globe. And it's that opportunity to keep in touch. We have such a wide network now of being able to reach out, yet we're probably the loneliest we've ever been, which is a real worry. So how do we enhance and harness tech to keep those connectivities, those human connections going? That's a really big key thing for me, and I think that's going to be a huge growth area, aside from the fiscal, big business, that side of things.
I think the next 20 years are going to be extraordinary. And if you look at what happened in the last 20 years and the speed of development, I think Jane's right that it's really hard to tell where it's going to go. I think we've got three choices, really. We either try and avoid it, or alternatively, we embrace it, or we champion it. And I go with the championing it, because I think we know that it's got the potential to make so much difference, to change lives for the positive. Then we should make sure that we are supporting those people who are trying to do that, and making sure that we have a vision, the vision thing again, but a vision that we can buy into, that we debate, that we try and refine, given the opportunities and potential that all of these things are going to throw up. And that means, as far as I'm concerned, I want to make sure that that debate is happening, and to be part of that debate and to push the opportunities, because if extraordinary things are going to happen over the next 20 years, let's make sure they are the right things, going in the right direction, improving our communities, improving all of the things that we would share as a common goal, and making sure that we don't fall over all of the things that all of us would want to avoid, and let the bad people and the bad things in through the door. I think it's going to be extraordinary, and I'm, you can tell I'm at the wrong end of the excitement around that. But looking around at the gathering here, you lot are going to be around in the next 20 years doing stuff that I couldn't dream of, but I'm going to try and help you fulfill your dreams.
If anyone has any questions that they'd like to put up through the QR code, do it now. We've got about 10 minutes left for some direct questions, if you'd like to do that. I do have to say, in the evening last night, one of the things that I was hounded to talk about, it's kind of tech, but is our connectivity as a region. Trains was what I was told last night. So, sorry, whilst you're all here, who would like to talk about trains? I think that the general, yep, okay. The general feeling is Norfolk as a region, you were right, it was touched on earlier, Steve, we were talking about the fact is like, people want to live here. People want to be here. The quality of life, Norwich as a city is absolutely gorgeous, and when we go back to talk about Liverpool and Bristol, both have fantastic things that make them a great city, but so does Norwich, right? It's like people want to be here. But connectivity is something that keeps coming back. We talked about broadband connectivity, 97% tick. It would be great if it was 100%, but that's great. But I think one of the real frustrations for residents is that connectivity, either east to west, but also down to London. And what can we do to improve it? Because it ain't getting any better, is it? Or do you think it is? Who wants to go first?
Trains is one of my favourite subjects. I've been involved in the train services to Norwich for rather a long time. In something like, I think it was 2010, a report was produced by the East of England Development Agency, long missed now, jointly with a body called Regional Cities East, which I was chair of at the time, which looked into what benefits we could get, what economics benefits we could get for Chelmsford, Colchester, Ipswich, Norwich, along that line, from improving the rolling stock and the infrastructure. And the answer was, and bearing in mind this was a 2010 figures, it was about £60 billion over the lifetime of the study, which was quite enough to make it worthwhile actually thinking about investing the money. But the warning was, don't spend the money on new rolling stock unless you spend the money on the infrastructure either at the same time or first. Because if you have lousy rails still, the trains won't go any faster, because even though they're brand new, they will still break down, or they won't be able to get there because the infrastructure will fail. And so here we are in 2024 with the infrastructure still not up to the job that we need to do it. And we're still talking about, and Steph might want to talk about Ely, but if you look at the Norwich to London line, the Hawley Junction keeps on coming up time and time again. And even the EDP, if there's anybody from the newspapers around, but even the EDP is talking about that. What about the Trouse Swing Bridge? Because that's the bottleneck which stops trains getting into Norwich, and actually is stopping us achieving things like the Norwich in 90, which was long ambition. We had it for about 20 minutes, and now it seems to be impossible to achieve on any sort of a regular basis. Investment in rail just makes so much sense. Investment sense, and there's two places where we absolutely need to do it. Oh, here's one, and the Trouse Swing Bridge is another one. Last time I heard that was about £70 million, remarkably. I thought it was about £20 million 10 years ago. So things have changed over that period of time. But for every reason, economic, social, connectivity, climate, for heaven's sake, there is no justification for not spending money on trains, and we should be prioritising spending the money on our public transport system, and I'll broaden it out from trains into buses and integrated transport, because we really should have an integrated transport system, rather than just keep on building new roads. So I am a big fan of investment in trains, a big fan in investment in public transport, and if the devolution deal, going back to that, managed to unlock any of that, then I'd certainly change my mind about the devolution deal that we've got now.
I think we both feel the pain of the Ely Junction, don't we? So in Thetford, yeah, it's underwhelming. 2 trains a day, an hour into London via Ely, but it's easier for me to drive to Cambridge North and get on the train there, which kind of defeats the object, although the new road is very nice, thank you very much. I think for a daughter that comes into Norwich regularly to work as well from Thetford, that train service is abysmal also. We need to do better on that front, and yes, the investment does need to happen. However, it should not be investment in rail and not in roads. It should not be investment in roads and not in rail. It should be investment in both. People have the right to choose how they move around the county. And actually, if we're all going to have electric or hydrogen-powered cars, they're going to still need roads. So I think investment in all of our infrastructure, in all modes of transport, is long overdue. And I know my MP has fought hard for the upgrades to Ely Junction. We keep getting told it's going to happen, and frankly, central government needs to sort it out now.
Everyone in the world is laughing at us. We invented the steam locomotive, and yet some of our train lines are barely operating on the next generation after steam. I think it's really shocking. In 2019, I stood against George Freeman in mid-Norfolk, and still the one campaign that we goaded him relentlessly on, which was level access to Platform 2 at Wyndham Station, still hasn't happened. Meanwhile, and I agree with Jane, actually, balanced investment in all modes of transport makes sense to me. The problem is that that's not actually happening in Norfolk. We've got this borderline fetishistic obsession with a £250 million Western Link road through a triple SI and conservation area just to make it a bit easier to get around the city, when other lower cost alternatives to solving congestion in England were dismissed and ignored, and we've got no plans to invest in rail. I can give you one comparison, which has become something of an obsession of mine, which is the orbital railway. Those of you who've been up to Norfolk will know that the Bittern line well serves the towns through Wroxham, North Walsham, Cromer and Sheringham. And then there's a tourist train you can get on full gauge tracks from Sheringham to Holt. And the kind of similar thing happens round the bottom up to Dereham. The cost of reinstating the orbital railway to connect up in a loop all those towns so that you could go from Norwich to Dereham through Melton Constable up to Holt, and then you join the existing railway in both directions. 10 years ago, a full feasibility study was done by Atkins Engineering, which priced it at only 20 million quid. So let's say that's doubled, and then some. It's never going to be anything like half the cost of putting a 3.5-mile bit of road to connect up the dots on the map that is the Western Link. So we're not seeing that balanced investment. And the case for reinstating rail, I think, has never been stronger. So I'm fully behind it. I think it's just such a shame that nothing is done on that level. It's back to what you were saying earlier about time horizons. It does take time, it takes commitment, but all of the cases, all the data, all the evidence, I think, is there to justify it.
I'm surprised we've hit exactly time. I said earlier to someone, I said, I don't know if I've got enough questions, I don't know if I'm going to fill it, but he assured me that you'd definitely be able to be done, and you've done a fantastic job of that. I wanted to invite everyone for a round of applause for our panel, Steve, Steph, and Jane. Thank you ever so much for your time. I hope you all found that enlightening. I really enjoyed it, so thank you so much for all of your time.